We got Mike. Should we bring Mike on?
Yeah, just bring Mike.
Let's
Bring Mike on.
All right, let me do a read. We're going to bring Mike Sando on with us. We really appreciate Mike joining us today. Mike's brought to us by FanDuel. August 26th is officially FanDuel Futures Day, a brand new holiday for football fans who live for bold predictions and preseason hunches. For just 24 hours, FanDuel is giving you deals on NFL season predictions, so whether you're calling your MVP, eyeing a long-shot division winner, or ready to crown your Super Bowl champ before Week 1 even kicks off, this is your moment. Visit the FanDuel app today and start planning your futures bets now, because Futures Day is a one-day-only event on the FanDuel app. FanDuel, it is America's #1 sportsbook. It is the official sportsbook of the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show. FanDuel, play your game when you want on FanDuel. And with that, we have the man who put together these tiers that we were just discussing, Mike Sando, joining us from The Athletic. Mike, we appreciate you taking some time to talk a little quarterback tiers with us, and we're curious what you heard on Joe Flacco, Kenny Pickett, and some of the other guys.
Yeah, so I mean, it's a little unfair to have Pickett in it because I don't think he was really, truly going to be the starter, but he was the lowest ranked guy in the whole thing. Sometimes that happens when you have a situation where there's not a starter name, so you put a couple guys in there. The Saints were one of those too, where like Spencer Rattler's in there, but he's probably not going to do it. The thing about Pickett, though, to me is, I think that while Pittsburgh is a really good situation on the whole, I think Mike Tomlin's a great coach. They're obviously a good organization. I think when Pickett was there was just a real low point of their offensive coordinating. I think Matt Canada was allowed to stay there a couple of years, and as I pointed out in the written part of my piece, like their stats on offense were indistinguishable and slightly better when Pickett was playing under Canada than when Ben Roethlisberger was. Obviously, diminished big men, but I just feel like a lot of these guys, unless there's some fatal flaw with them, who are decent players, but not, enough to go succeed anywhere. It's the environment. It's where they're at, and we see that all the time with Sam Darnold coming up, looks horrific. Everyone's laughing at him. Baker Mayfield's had his ups and downs. You get to a good spot, some good players around you. You don't have to carry it all. You can be better. So I think Pickett's better than his tier 5. I think he could start for somebody. Flacco is a little bit more fun because I think one of the defensive coordinators I talked to was like, he's still playing, and I think people respect Joe, but also know that if you probably wouldn't want to go all 17 games with him necessarily either. And I think the Browns know that too. That's why they drafted like 17 quarterbacks this year.
Mike, we'll talk more about the tiers, but while we're on the topic of Browns quarterbacks, I know rookies are not part of this, but I'm just wondering if you've talked to anybody about Shedeur and Dillon and just what the Browns are trying to accomplish with 2 rookie quarterbacks and what the feeling around the league has been on those guys.
Yeah, I think that, obviously Shedeur looked pretty decent when he played in the preseason, so that was nice. It's not much to go on. I always think it's more important if you look horrible in the preseason than if you look good. I think most coaches can make you look decent in the preseason, so it's better than the alternative. Not much to go on. I think Cleveland has confounded a lot of people with, okay, how did they get to this point? What were they doing in the 3rd and the 5th round? Some of that stuff is just typical Cleveland. But I think now that they're on the team, the only way to get a decent quarterback is to draft quarterbacks. So I don't have a problem, bringing multiple quarterbacks onto a team that doesn't have a quarterback. It was just kind of weird how they got there, and you always wonder what's up behind the curtain with the Browns.
Mike, we were talking about, tier 1, obviously. Me personally would not have Matthew Stafford in tier 1 with those other 4 guys, but that's fine. What I don't understand, I can't, the 4 people that voted Lamar Jackson tier 2 and the 3 people that voted Josh Allen tier 2. First of all, are the 3 that voted Josh Allen tier 2, are they 3 of the 4 that also had Lamar tier 2? Or, I don't understand what those guys are thinking.
Yeah, there's some overlap. I agree with you. I think it's I've learned this. I've done the quarterback tiers for 12 years. You talk to 50 people, you're going to get some outliers on the edges. And you mentioned Stafford. He barely made the top tier. There's huge gap between those other guys, as there should be. So he's basically on the border of 1-2, and that's where he's been in the past. So the panel changes every year. He got 5 more tier 1 votes. That could just be because I talked to different guys.
Right.
As far as why would Joe Burrow and Mahomes be unanimous 50 tier 1, and why would Lamar and Josh get just a smattering, just a few tier 2 votes? I think Mahomes goes in a different category where we're not like reevaluating off of his stats every year, right? He's just Mahomes until somebody gets him out of there. So put him in a different one. Then I think I've always felt this. Everybody in the league values passing over rushing for a quarterback. Even though you could say the rushing makes Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson be tougher to defend. There's always a premium put on the passing. So, I don't want to read too much into it, but I do believe there was at least one voter, a defensive coordinator, I think, who had only Mahomes and Burrow in tier 1. So you have a very high bar for passing the football for a few people. And they think that Josh and Lamar are good. Very good at passing the football. They don't see him on the same level, and they don't give the commensurate sort of boost for the rushing. That's a very small number of people, but it's a few people in the league.
Mike, I want to ask you about Justin Herbert, because on your list, I think he's 7th. What is it about him that people see? Because, in my mind, when I think about Justin Herbert, I always go back to, him losing the game to Trevor Lawrence against the Jaguars. What is it about Justin Herbert that makes people think, he's this top quarterback, and he hasn't really won a lot of big games?
He hasn't done anything. I have this conversation with people in the league, too. What's he done? In fact, I was talking to a head coach yesterday. I was joking with him because he had he might have put I can't remember if he put a 3, but he had a lower vote on Herbert, and we were going back and forth, and he's just like, what has he done? So there's people who feel that. His number of tier 1 votes was high. Like in 2021, he came onto the scene, top 5, 6 pick. Look at him, right? I mean, he's everything you would want in terms of he's a big, tall guy who can make every throw. And it's not like he plays bad, but his number of tier 1 votes has gotten fewer every year. And so I think people are kind of getting to where you're already at. Like, you got to do something, right? You got to move the needle with the team. Now, I will say when Brandon Staley was there, they had a bottom 5 defense / kind of special teams. And that's very hard to overcome. And we saw Joe Burrow last year go 9-8 with an amazing season. And I'm not saying Herbert's played to that level, but he's had some decent years. I think the question now is he ever going to be tier 1, right? They're going to a Jim Harbaugh, Greg Roman offense where you're going to hand it off. I don't know that we're suddenly going to see him put up those numbers. He's going to have to do it in the playoffs, like you said.
Mike, when I was looking at the Joe Flacco breakdown, he ended up in tier 4 with 44 tier 4 votes, but he got 5 tier 5 votes, 5 tier 3 votes, and 1 tier 2 vote.
What?
I got to know. The person who put him in tier 2, what was the reason?
He had to be high, that guy, right?
No, well, I mean, we had a laugh about it because he's like, I love Joe Flacco. He just loved him. Just big respect for him. And look, I mean, could I have talked him into a 3? Yes. I'm sure I could have said, what are you doing? But I like to get the votes. I like to get the votes as they are. I'm not like I'm not trying to swing the election. I'm not standing outside the polling place going, hey, this guy's a 3. People
fair.
can, people can. So, you're going to get an outlier, but there's some respect for Joe. There's one guy out there, Joe. He's got your back. You're still a 2.
Oh, that's funny.
Was that the most, I don't want to say ridiculous because I don't want to insult the voter, but was that the
surprising?
one that most surprising vote of anyone you guys got?
Yeah, I'll say this. One person gave so tier 4 is an interesting tier because if you're an old player who's been around a long time, tier 4 means we don't think that you're a starter for the whole year anymore. But tier 4 can also be like J.J. McCarthy. We haven't seen you play, so we don't really know. So there was one person who gave all of the rookies from 2024 tier 4, like haven't seen enough, and I'm like, Jaden Daniels? I mean, he went to the championship game. You're going to give him a 4 the same as you're going to give J.J.? I didn't say that, but I mean, sometimes with these voting, like I'll say this, the overall results are a reflection of the league. It's a market value. But any one vote says as much about the voter as it does about some of the quarterbacks. Does that make sense to you?
Absolutely. That's
any one ballot tells you about that voter, right? You put it together and it's pretty much a good thing. But that's why we do 50, because there's always someone out. If I did 5, it might look totally different, and you'd be like, this isn't any valuable, value.
No, that's a good point, because Jaden Daniels getting the same grade as J.J. McCarthy is insane.
Yeah.
But
you can't do that. And if one guy does it out of 50, it doesn't screw the whole thing up. It doesn't.
Right. It's
no one person ruins this thing. Although there was 1 year after Mahomes lost the Super Bowl. Remember when Tampa was chasing him all around? There was 1 year somebody gave him a 2, and I was just like, I was just like, all right, that's all anyone's going to ask about on these things is like that one vote, and it's not really representative, but it is funny.
Do you ever hang up the phone and go, how do you have a job in the NFL? like what you just said, that's like for the most part, I like to think they're way smarter than we are, and that's why they're where they are and why we are where we are. But then you hear something like that, I'm like, oh my God, maybe I'm way off on this.
Yeah, I think here's the deal. I learned so much from the group of people, and I do believe that person who we are laughing at for having whatever vote would still, I don't talk to anybody who I think isn't smart or I benefit from the conversation,
sure.
Right? So you're going to get some people with a little bit of different views, and that's just true. Like I said, if we did a political poll, you're going to get somebody out there who's smart but has an outlier view, and you're like, that doesn't make any sense to me, but it doesn't mean that you can't get something from that person, if that makes sense.
You know, Mike, I had a chuckle when I seen Kenny Pickett in the 5th, and then I seen Joe Flacco not that far away in the 4th. But as we just flashed those tiers, the Indianapolis Colts is in a similar situation because they got Daniel Jones at I think 30, and then Anthony Richardson at 33. Do you think they made the right decision with the Daniel Jones over Anthony Richardson, and will they probably be looking for a quarterback next year as well?
I think yes and yes. I feel for Anthony Richardson because it's not his fault he was taken 5th overall, but I think there's a lot that goes with being that job in a locker room that he's not ready for. And I don't know that he'll get there or not, but that's not up to those guys in that locker room to wait 3-4 years for him to see a basic thing in the preseason like the other night when he got hit, when he's looking the wrong way with a hot blitzer coming. I mean, that's to me emblematic of somebody who's not ready for the job. And so the mistake they made was using that high of a pick on him, not deciding to go with Daniel Jones. It's unfortunate, but I think I would do that too. You'll lose the locker room going with someone who's not ready, and then you'll probably you're hoping if you're Shane Steichen, hey, I can get a Giants-type season out of this guy like they did in whatever the year that was, 2022, maybe 3, where they went to the playoffs. You're hoping for that. And then, I think you're back in the game next year looking for a quarterback. And then the question is, who gets to make that decision, right? Do you keep going back with the same people making the decision when you've had a run of not great decisions?
Mike, I want to wrap it up with a couple of interesting guys in Tier 2, and that's Jared Goff and Baker Mayfield. They've had similar career paths. I mean, Goff's gone deeper in the playoffs because he's been part of that because he's been on better teams, to be fair. But they both were obviously very high picks, had some level of success at their first stop. Things went completely kind of off the rails for both of them. Baker was off the rails a little longer than Goff. They both moved on to other teams, and now they've both consistently gotten better the last 2 years to the point where they're now, solid Tier 2s, and I really like. I mean, I think they're both, in terms of their overall ranking, I think they're both in fair spots. I wouldn't have thought 2 years ago that Goff and Baker would be top 12 quarterbacks, but I think they clearly are. Froze. I was like,
it was such a good question.
At first I was like, I didn't really ask a question. So maybe that's why he's not responding. I was thinking about that. I was like, all right. But no,
we'll give Mike 1 sec to hop back.
Yeah.
I was going to ask about Anthony Richardson.
It's like I just wanted him to comment on my thoughts about Baker and Goff. But I realized I didn't really ask a question. It wasn't a good question.
I just got a text from Mike who said they had a power outage. So that will wrap up our interview with Mike Sando. We appreciate
Thanks,
Mike for
even though you're not hearing us now.
Here.